welcome to Art.0 with me, RJ. Before I start today, I just want to give a quick apology for the gross right eye. I walked into a tree branch in the woods the other day and it looks kind of gross now. Just try not to look at it. So, on today's show, I'm going to talk about the latest bit of content to come from social media star Rudy Mancuso. Before I talk about the artwork itself though, here's a brief background on the artist. Full disclosure, when I was sitting in art history lectures, I thought the background and bio portion of the lecture was very boring and I hated having to learn it. So for everybody's benefit, I'm going to keep this pretty short. Mancuso got big on the Vine platform.
Yo, can you pass my phone?
He really mastered the art of the short comedy sketch on Vine. He had a fan favorite routine, the Latino Superman. But his real stroke of brilliance was to use Vine to share music.
And the loop is what got me interested, because I was like, music. I want to be the first person to make a perfect musical loop on Vine.
Eventually he was picked up by Shot Studios. That's a company that creates content specifically for social media, and apparently Netflix too, sometimes. So with solid financial and promotional backing, his own YouTube channel launched in 2015. His channel basically picked up on the momentum he had gained on Vine, so he was expanding his smaller comedy sketches into longer comedy videos, and he was taking the idea of music looping and turning it into more complex one-man band projects. And that takes us to now. After spending years establishing himself as a great comedian, musician, and overall personality, he's given the world synesthesia. Everything about this video signifies that the tone and subject matter are serious, which as far as I know, is a first for Rudy. Look at how the intro footage sets the tone. In exposing the set, and the cameras, and all that behind the scenes stuff, he's really made it feel like a documentary. No funny characters, no accents, just real talk between artist and audience.
Terrified.
So, if it's obvious that he's not aiming for humor, or just a song for its own sake, this project must be something else, and that something is art. And not just any art. Rudy is signaling to the audience that the piece is meant to be art of the experimental, conceptual kind.
I'm Rudy Mancuso, and today we're going to do something pretty weird. I wanted to answer the question, what does my music look like?
So, let's take a close look at what he ended up creating, and let's see if it pulled it off. My first reaction to the piece was, wow, what a great idea! A multimodal artwork that translates the auditory experience of music to a visual display. But then I remembered that using art to capture the experience of synesthesia isn't exactly groundbreaking at all. I don't know if anybody else watched Disney's Fantasia as a kid, but I thought it was the best. The entire project was based on the idea of audiovisual synesthesia, and it was doing it in 1940.
What you're going to see are the designs and pictures and stories that music inspired in the minds and imaginations of a group of artists.
This host guy begins the film by explaining that some music evokes abstracted colors or forms, some evoke specific images and scenes, and some evokes a complete narrative. I'm not sure how he draws the line between these categories. I mean, here's the animation for a Bach composition called Toccata and Fugue in D minor. Apparently, the visuals that correspond to this music are trippy and non-representational, while the song from The Sorcerer's Apprentice tells this very specific narrative, one that is supposedly about the dangers of necromancy and slavery. And who decided that the Nutcracker Suite tells a story of a total thought of a fish swimming about in this coy manner? But anyway, I do agree with the Disney man that music evokes things, no matter how specific or subjective they are. And I'm bringing it up because I'm not sure that what Rudy ended up with really counts as an evoked image per se, because it wasn't really the result of an artist's interpretation after all. Unlike Fantasia, whose images come from animators, the bulk of synesthesia's visual component comes from program machinery.
We built a bunch of experiment stations and technology that essentially translate musical notes and MIDI signals into paint on a canvas.
See what I mean? It's not like someone thought, this is what I see or feel when I hear Rudy's music. Instead, a paint dispensing rig was set up over the canvas to distribute paint in time with the rhythm of the song. And the paint cannons that go off in time with the bass drum and the guitar, they have the same problem as the flying rig. They essentially provide the canvas with what is a one-to-one correspondence between the application of music and the application of paint. It's not like Fantasia is the only standard by which to judge Rudy's piece. If you want other examples, all you have to do is literally Google Synesthesia-inspired art. Look at the results I got. There's just so much raw creativity here. Basically, I'm saying that Mancuso went too literal with the execution of this piece. Timing the paint drops to be ejected in time with various notes in a logical, top-down, left-to-right fashion, like a printer, doesn't necessarily translate the experience of the music. I'd say that it makes a visual record of tempo and duration, almost like a weird tab with colors. If anything, it actually reminds me of that automatic robotic piano tab thing from the Westworld intro. It would have been interesting if Mancuso had chosen to go lower tech. If there were a more human element in the interpretation, it might have been less bound to a logic-driven idea of synesthesia. I mean, the original question that Mancuso asked,
What does my music look like?
it can't be answered by a mechanized setup. Or maybe it could be, but not by this setup that he used. So, to sum up my critique of Mancuso's piece so far, I've basically argued that the concept of synesthesia isn't novel or original, and the execution didn't fully sell this concept. But at the same time, the attempt involved an impressive array of technology. Synesthesia doesn't reach its full potential as art, but as an experiment, it does give us something to talk about. The Westworld comparison, that got me thinking. Maybe synesthesia opens the door for a whole realm of technologically augmented, multimodal performance art. Mancuso's paint delivery systems are not the most effective way to visually capture the experience of his music, in my opinion. But as engineering accomplishments, they represent so much possibility. With ingenuity, there's actually no limit to the ways in which machinery can be used to translate music into visuals. Perhaps new algorithms, or even artificial intelligence, could be used in the future to blend different forms of sensory perception in ways we can't even imagine. So maybe Rudy's build is just a scratch on the surface of what could be a generation of cyborg-inspired art, or an era where creative endeavors have a non-human element. But that's getting too far ahead of ourselves for now. What we have in front of us is this piece, Synesthesia. And to be honest, recognizing all the potential it could have had, but failed to exhibit, doesn't actually make a better case for it. What if, like performance art, the real art that's going on here is the act of its creation, not what ends up on the canvas? If we compare the entire video for Synesthesia to the actual work on the canvas, I think it's pretty clear that the video itself is what Mancuso wants us to see. So if I were to talk about Synesthesia as a piece of video art, rather than a set of paintings, maybe I could find more merit. But there's a problem with this too. The video in question is meant to be a making-of documentary, and therefore I can't say that it's really video art. There's just too much self-promotion and false grandiosity in, around, and behind the actual idea he's working with. To be honest, I think he's trying too hard to push his way into the art world. He lays on heavy signifiers that this is groundbreaking and highly conceptual, rather than letting the art speak for itself. But most of all, the part of this video that I just take issue with the most is that he started with that one line.
I'm about to attempt in one go to perform an entire piece using this technology. And I'm terrified.
Like, really? What was at stake for him that would make failure such a frightening prospect? It's not as though his career or financial stability depended on how well Synesthesia turned out. I think he just said that because it gets people on his side by expressing a sort of humility and by suggesting that some groundbreaking avant-garde shit's about to go down. In an interview with Zach Sang, Mancuso takes a moment to talk about some of the advantages of user-generated platforms.
YouTube seemed like the most obvious place to create because there are very few limitations and restrictions.
Because
Very few parameters. I can do whatever I want, however I want it, for as long as I want it.
Talking about the potential benefits that are unique to digital media, that's very relevant to Art.0, and I should be all about that. But just listen to the unique benefit he chooses to identify.
My team and I like to pump stuff out at a pretty rapid rate. So if I have an idea on Monday, I'd like to believe that I can get that idea published by the end of the week, which on other platforms or traditionally was impossible 20 years ago, 30 years ago. That was quite impossible to do. Today you can do it with your phone.
Okay, Rudy. So the best part about being completely unbound to convention and having total creative freedom is that you can mass produce content at the fastest possible rate? I don't agree with that. But I will be fair to Rudy. He is honest about why he's all about maximizing the quantity of content rather than the quality.
My dream has always been to direct and score my own feature film. With every video, every skit, every sketch, every song I put out, every music video I direct, that's just feeding into that end goal.
And there you have it, people. Mancuso's content, according to the man himself, is a means to an end. Every effort, every video, every creation, it's all just there to get him to a point where he can realize his true dream, directing and scoring a full-length feature film. Many art theorists would say that art can't have a purpose other than itself. So if Rudy's content is out there just to fund his larger dream, can any of it actually be art? Part of me wants to say, yeah, of course it can. Mancuso may have other goals in mind, but the stuff he does on the way to accomplishing those goals, that stuff can still be expressive or provocative and all that good criticky stuff that I love so much. But looking at Synesthesia, it seems like his priorities do ultimately inform the way the content turned out, and not for the better. It could be that he didn't really give Synesthesia the full thought it deserves because he wasn't in the moment. Maybe he would have made a more provocative piece if he truly looked at it as an opportunity to experiment with pure expression, rather than just another step on his way to accomplish his true goal. Or maybe he really did make Synesthesia for the sake of pure expression, but just lacked the imagination to push the idea further. Whether the shortcoming exists in the intent or the artistic vision, the end result is the same. At the end of the day, Synesthesia is very much like art,
Except a little crappier. Not as good.
You might be asking yourself at this point, why would I choose Mancuso for this episode if I was just going to lay into his artwork? Well, first of all, my goal isn't to say this is a bad piece of art, because that's not how good criticism works. What I am saying is, here's what the artist says he set out to do, and for these reasons, here's why I don't think he accomplished that goal. But he did get me talking about his work. Art, or the kind of art I feature on this show, is a difficult, finicky, and moving target. And even aiming for that target, I guess Mancuso did take a bit of a risk. He didn't hit his target, but the attempt itself is what gave me reason to bring up his name in Art.0. So that's it for this time. Thanks very much for watching. On the next episode, the topic is all about street artists who share their work on Instagram. Graffiti and other kinds of street art, traditionally speaking, are subversive or illegal. It's something that's usually done at the dead of night when no one's looking. But now, because of Instagram, we can actually see an artist throw up their work. Plus, what was once very site-specific is now instantly accessible from anywhere. For example, the artists I'll be looking at, LNST from France and Say Lisa from Germany, I can look at their stuff from the comfort of my couch. So what does that mean for the art form? Hopefully, we'll answer that question and more on the next Art.0. Don't miss it! See you next time.